And I'm deliberately recording this so then if you would like to go back and watch anything later, you'll be able to access that, and I'll show you how to access that soon. Feel free to tweet if you're a tweeter, whatever that word is, throughout the presentation. My handle is there, and Callaghan1. Okay, before we get started, let me just hit that again. Here we go. I'd like to firstly acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and we acknowledge on the role of elders past, present and future, and the importance of observing these cultures, customs, traditions of Aboriginal Australia. So these are the things that we're going to go through today. So if you're good at fast math, you're going to see that that's going to take us way past our point. But as you can tell from the way I am speaking at the moment, I've had a lot of coffees and I've done very few steps. So I'm very positive that I will be able to get through this content rather quickly, and hopefully be able to provide you with some real life examples that's going to be able to assist. I've deliberately broken this presentation up into two components. So the first part, we're looking at all of the syllabus and I guess all the documentation that we need to abide by, and then we will look at the technology past that. And the reason why I like to do that is just to remind staff that, you know, there's always a starting point, because it's very easy to be overwhelmed with all of these things, particularly when introducing technology. So going back to basics and starting fresh is always a good idea, and it's a great way to actually navigate your way through the process and ensure that you've actually met all the checkboxes that you need to be checking. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing today as well is I will have a Padlet going on the side. So I know it's some of you are working in classrooms with many other teachers, so it's not going to be very possible for you to basically call out if you've got any questions, and I like to try to keep this as interactive as possible. So let me just show you what the Padlet looks like. So this is it. So if you've never used a Padlet before, everybody should hopefully have access. If you don't have access, please let me know. But you can just pop it into the chat. I'm pretty sure it's all public. But to add a comment or a question or a statement, or if you just want to go, yep, know this, move on, whatever, you can either just double click on here and you can type, or you can click on this little post button down the bottom as well and type something as well. If you want to be yep, beautiful. If you want to be fancy, you want to change the color of your post, because, you know, primary school teachers do tend to do this. We can certainly do that as well. And you can add pictures and all sorts of things. I tend to use Padlet a lot with my students. So yeah, another great learning tool that you can use for math and you can use for many other subjects. Okay, looks like we're all good there, which is fantastic. Okay, let me come back to this screen. Okay, the other resource that I'm going to use, and I've actually created this for you guys, and it's a resource that you can go back to at any time. It's a Google site. It's nothing special, but it has all of your resources on there. So if you type in bit.ly/NBLA_tech, it is case sensitive, so please ensure that you actually write those correctly. But I do believe that Catherine has sent this link already. So if I click on that link, let me just open that. And I'll just share my other screen. I'm working off two screens here. I'm feeling very tech savvy. I don't know if it's actually working though. So this is what the website looks like. So hopefully you can see that. So within here, you can scroll down and you've got links to all of these things. So I'll just quickly go through it just so you can see. The first link is our presentation. So if you click on that, you'll see the presentation that I'm going to be delivering. And beneath that is the link to the Padlet, and I will be asking you to do an exit survey at the end of today as well. If you go back to home, you can access everything. So we've got the purpose, the progressions and the capabilities that we're going to be going through. I've got some information there about student feedback. I don't know if I'm going to have time to discuss that, but I've put that in there as well anyways. Merging traditional to innovation, looking at the trajectories, which I'll go through. There's some additional resources here that you can look at and get more resources from the department. I've just basically collated them and put them all in one place. And today I'm also going to go through SeeSaw, Microsoft, Google, and Apple. Very aware that every school has a different tech platform, and some schools use multiple. So I'll go through each of those as well as provide some examples for each of those as well. Within today's session, I'm actually going to insert the recording here. So this is where you'll find the recording for today's session. And I've got my contact information there as well down the bottom. So if you want to contact me afterwards, please do so. I love getting emails from teachers. It's probably one of my favorite times of the day. So please, much nicer than receiving emails from my boss. Okay, so now that I've gone through all of that, we'll just get straight into it. Okay. Right. Okay, so let me just double check that I'm sharing the right screen. Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to start with, oops, no, I've done something wrong there. Yep, okay, well, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so first let's start off with the maths numeracy progressions. Now, the reason why I like to start this is because, as I said earlier, like going back to basics, but the progression gives us a really good benchmark and a good starting place as to what we actually need for our students to do and to learn. And as you probably are aware, there are 3 elements within here, and they've got sub-elements within that as well. And then within that, you've got your measurements and all that sort of thing. Now, the 3 key areas that we need to remember within math, regardless of how we deliver it, is the number sense and algebra. And this comes important, and I will discuss this later when I talk about research. We look at measurement and geometry and statistics and probability. Now, these 3 together form the basis of everything that students need to learn in high school or for the rest of their lives. So if they don't get these topics, if they don't understand these topics well in primary school, it actually delays their learning later on. And with the with the progressions, we see that this is what it looks like within the elements. So, and you guys are so familiar with this. I'm very aware. I'm just going to go through this just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So with this, we see the elements, we see the sub-elements, and we can also see what the progression level is when there's an element like the descriptor is in there. So we can actually see the progression level for each student. So this is what we need to actually be able to do this is what we need to incorporate and consider when we actually apply technology to our learning. Now, looking at this, the progressions, I then decide to look at the general capabilities in numeracy. Now, this is a bit different. So we're now starting to look at so many different parts to the puzzle. So the next part is that we look at numeracy, and we look at the 6 interrelated elements that's within the learning continuum. So this is really important because this plays a huge part on transitioning students from infants to primary. So the other one was a huge focus from primary to high school or to middle school. So these 2 models, in a sense, whilst they offer different skills, or they offer different avenues for learning and opportunities of learning, they actually work hand in hand together. Now, the reason that these are important is because when we look at this, we can actually start to embed some of the things that we learned in the progressions into these capabilities. So when we look at, for example, using measurement, we can already ascertain which of those measurements we saw in the progressions can fit in there. Hang on a second, it's thunderstorming and my dogs are barking. Sorry about that. Okay. And that's why these capabilities come in handy. So what I tend to do is that when I'm looking at a progression such as numeracy and I want to incorporate into this, I actually try to map them. And sometimes it's done through backward mapping, sometimes it's done through just forward mapping, normal mapping, but I try to allocate and see where everything sits together. And the reason why I do this is because when we incorporate IT, we've got an additional layer that we need to add. So before I get to IT though, I just want to talk about research. So the research actually says, now this research is 2 years old, but it says that fractions and decimals have the highest need in high school. And if students understand these concepts or what these processes are involved in primary, they basically fall behind in high school. So a lot of the work that we do in IT or that are supported by IT do focus on fractions and decimals. And we can do that through visualizations. We can do that through games. There's a whole heap of tools that we can do that. And, you know, as primary school teachers, you guys are the most innovative people in terms of coming up with different random activities. And I'm also going to be looking at how to combine that traditional form of activities with technology, because it's so simple, and a lot of teachers don't realize that you know, really basic ICT tasks could actually constitute as using tech. So I'll look at that as well. Unfortunately, also in the research, that student attitudes towards math are negative. And this is a story that I like to share whenever I talk about math. And this happened a number of years ago. I was working with a school who their students just hated math. I can't remember exactly what year, if it was year 2 or year 3. So they were still quite young. And the students knew that they had math groups at the start of their day. So students were deliberately coming to school at recess, so they would miss math groups. And the attendance level for all these students was just really, really poor. So I worked with a teacher to work out how we could actually get these students to get to school early or participate in math groups, because we didn't want to just change math groups in the middle of the day and, you know, make it a huge burden on the teacher. So we decided to include and implement Minecraft education in the program. So what we actually did was we got these kids to make a working calculator in Minecraft, and they could use that calculator to do any of their math tasks. So suddenly the attendance went up and students were all excited about doing math, all because they weren't doing math anymore, they were playing in Minecraft. So once we flipped that and put the focus onto something else, the students were really, really excited and really happy to do the work, because I felt that that was what they were actually doing as opposed to doing their math work. And, you know, their learning abilities went up, their skills went up, attendance went up, they were all engaged, and, you know, they're all excited to do math groups once again. So it just shows that there's lots of different ways that we can try to remove that negativity and try to get kids excited about math again. And having said that, actually, there's a new tool that's just been released on the department website. I think it's a brains trust thing that's for math that was launched today. So check that out on the department homepage. Okay, so now that I've talked about all of numeracy, progressions and whatnot, let's look at the ICT capability. So the ICT capability, there are 5 elements that we need to look at, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. And there is a ton of evidence that shows that there's a massive link between ICT and literacy, which is awesome. But unfortunately, there is absolutely no data that shows us if there's a link between numeracy and IT. So that is a downfall, and I'm assuming that the reason why that information isn't available is because we wouldn't know how to capture it. And that is because, you know, IT is quite complex, and it is very difficult to implement into all KLAs, basically. I certainly know that in high school that's the case. Unfortunately, though, we are expected to include ICT within all KLAs, right from K to 10, and we've got the new capability continuum to show us that. And you know, the fact that it is so complex and that technology is changing so much, and particularly now with COVID, we've got so many more tools at our disposal, but that we probably never had even a year ago. The new technology syllabus has been pushed back yet again, because we're just not comfortable with the fact of releasing it, because we just think that there is just a lot more information that we could be including. So in terms of ICT, in terms of the capability, the 5 areas. So the main 2 is managing and operating ICT, as well as applying social and ethical issues. But the main ones that we try to get students to focus on is how to investigate, how to create, and how to communicate. And that could be just as simple as finding something on, you know, Google and sharing it with somebody, or, you know, and when we talk about create, we look at trying to get the student to move away from just consuming the tech to actually creating something on tech. And it's actually so much easier than we expected to do. So we don't actually have to come up with all these really fancy things that a lot of schools are showcasing, you know, what their schools are doing. It can be something very, very simple that is the most effective tool. And I'm not a big person on, you know, bigger the better. I'm very much, you know, keep it simple, stupid sort of person. The smaller it is, the more impact it's going to have on your students. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're working towards. So all of this information and all of these resources are available on that Google site that I've shown you. So if you click on that, it'll take you directly to each of the capability pages on the Australian Curriculum website. So when we put it all together in terms of our planning, these are the 3 layers or 3 things that we need to consider. But, you know, if you think about it, you know, so this, we've already got the progressions, we've got the numeracy capability, we've got the ICT capability, plus we've got all of the other pedagogies that our principal or our school would like to implement. So there are so many layers to this. So quite a lot of things that we need to consider when we actually put our lessons in, together. In addition to that, some of you may have students with special needs. You may have gifted and talented students. You may have like a range of individual learning plans that you need to adhere to as well. So it's actually quite a complex process. It's not as easy as one would assume. So when we put it all together, basically we line it up so it is a bit of a linear process. Not ideal, but it is a linear. So these are the 3 things that I said that we need to consider. It's the maths and numeracy progression, the numeracy general capability, and then the ICT general capability. So when we start, there are 2 steps to this process. So the first thing we do is we plan the task. So when we plan the task, the first thing we look at is the activity itself. So what is it in the numeracy progression that we want our students to learn and to excel at? And then once we do that, we look at where it fits within the general capability for maths, for numeracy. And then once we've done that, we look at, well, where can we put this, or where does this fit nicely within the ICT capability? So that's the whole planning task. So we need to remember that, and you'll hear me say this over and over again, it's pedagogy that's leading technology, not technology that's leading pedagogy. So it's always pedagogy first. So then that's the planning of the task. Creating the task, we do things backwards. So we start with the tool. So we start with ICT and then we backward map it. So then we look at how that general capability is going to be attained through that ICT tool. And then we look at the learning outcome that the student's going to accomplish and what is their output. What do they actually need to do within that ICT task to attain that learning outcome? So that's an example of how pedagogy drives technology. So it's really important that we always look at pedagogy first. And we also need to remember too, you know, I understand that we've got a lot of people here from lots of different schools. Pedagogy at your school is going to look completely different to the person on the next screen in your Zoom window. It is a very, very unique approach to many different schools, and you know, the reason why is that there is no one size fits model. The cohort of students at different schools does vary, as well as a cohort of teachers. I think we need to remember that, you know, without the driver having the skill and the expertise in this, your pedagogy is going to look a bit different as well. So we need to remember too, you know, is it the way that your school is doing things, is it a stage-based approach, or is it a whole school-based approach, or are we just, you know, are individual teachers allowed to do whatever they like? So that is something that, you know, should start conversations within your school, and hopefully you can determine what you all think that pedagogy looks like, so then you're all on the same page for technology. And in terms of technology, again, as I said, you don't have to have a single platform. You don't have to be a Microsoft school or a Google school or an Apple school. There are many schools that have multi-platforms and succeed quite successfully. The only thing that I would suggest, though, that if you are doing something like that with a multi-platform, and this is only because of the evidence that we collected during COVID, is that if you are doing something like that, that when you are VCing, for example, if we have to go back into lockdown, when you do contact your students, do have one way of contacting them, rather than have different teachers contact students using different technologies. Probably not so much of an issue in primary school, but certainly in high school. I know for my own children, they're a multi-platform school, and they would have, they've got their 6-period day, but it would have 3 or 4 phone calls or VC lessons, and 1 in Teams, 1 in Google Meet, 1 in Zoom, 1 in Adobe Connect. It was a bit ridiculous by the end of the day. So having a whole school approach to that would certainly simplify things. Okay, so now it's time to look at our Padlet. So let's see if anyone has put any comments or any thoughts or any questions down yet. Okay, more stage-based, investigating. Beautiful. Oh, thank you. Okay. No questions yet. Thank you for the compliments. I very much like those. But questions. I'm here to help. Okay, we will. Oh, fantastic. We're starting to a whole school approach. That's fantastic. And a lot of schools are going this way and having a bit of a maths, I guess, learning trajectory within their own schools as well. I'm not going to be speaking so much about math trajectories today, but I will be talking about ICT learning trajectories and including some models that I've actually developed with some schools as well. Okay, I will come back to that in a minute. Okay, so we're literally already looking at we've already looked at all of the I guess, syllabus outcome side. Now we're going to start looking at all the tech, which is a lot more fun. Okay, so these are the things that I want you to think about in your school. And again, these questions are in the presentation that's on your website, so you don't have to scramble to write them down. That's fine. So these are the considerations, and these are really important. A lot of teachers go, oh yeah, it's fine, but without having a solid understanding of what technology lies within your school, you can't actually maximize the opportunities of your students. So the considerations are what technology is available at your school, what technology is available to your class. And that's really important. Like, you may have some fantastic computer labs or some great, MacBooks or window devices or whatnot, but if your class can't get access to them, they're not going to be very useful. Do you have the opportunity for co-teaching? Lots of evidence today that co-teaching is where a lot of schools are heading towards because they are providing a lot more opportunities for students to gain different, ways of learning different ways from different teachers. And as a teacher, as you all know, we all teach differently, so some students will just prefer or understand other teachers more so than others, not for any particular reason. Another really important question is, what is the student device ratio in your school? A lot of schools are now moving towards 1-to-1 and others are moving towards BYOD. So that is something, again, that is important to look at. And what tool is most preferred or used by teachers at your school or stage? And the reason why we ask about teacher usage is because there is a lot of schools that are being set up at the moment, or a lot of teachers who are moving to new schools, and the schools there are using completely different technologies than what they've been using in the past. And teachers almost feel like that they are a first-year teacher again. And it's not productive if teachers aren't able to use the technology within your school. So understanding what the teacher's skill set is actually quite beneficial. So these questions collectively will help you determine which devices you use, what software you can access. And the reason why I have mentioned that one specifically is that if you've decided to go down, like, for example, Chromebooks or iPads, you are restricted to using Google and Apple apps that can only be used on those devices. So they are factors of consideration. If you go through Windows devices, you don't have the option of accessing Apple apps. So again, there are pros and cons for everything. There is no correct answer. There is no one size fits all. Many schools are having banks of different types of devices. So there are schools that have got a combination. I know that Manly Vale is one. They have a combination of iPads as well as window devices that they share between all of the students from K-6. So it's not so much that we recommend certain students to have, devices between Kindy and Year 1, for instance, and then Year 2 to Year 6 have a different device. That's not not the approach that we take at all. And we certainly don't like let examinations, external examinations such as NAPLAN or whatnot, determine what sort of devices that we get either. They can be performed on any device once that does become completely online. But and we feel that students can complete those exams regardless of the device that they access the exam on. Staff confidence levels is really important, and this is where understanding what your teachers are able to use. A lot of teachers, particularly when they move, for example, from a Google school to a Microsoft school, feel really overwhelmed with trying to learn an entirely new software, when in actual fact they are exactly the same, they just look differently, and sometimes to access things they do access a bit differently as well. So but having that professional learning, and I know that I'm sort of speaking outside what I'm supposed to be speaking at the moment, but having that professional learning, having that support network within the school, and even if it's a bit of a buddy system or through co-teaching, helping other teachers understand or have the skill of what they need to be able to do to complete a task is really important. And the biggest, I guess, obstacle that I face is teachers not having enough faith in themselves. The amount of teachers that go, I don't understand tech and there's something wrong, when in actual fact it's not even them, it's the technology itself that's not doing what it's supposed to do. So that's a confidence level that we're trying to improve within schools. And then we also look at teacher management of hardware and software. So if you're using if you're a BYOD school, you won't have teacher management. You won't be able to control what the students can and can't see or can't access. You do have a little through the T4L network. So we are able to block sites such as YouTube or whatnot. But if you are using managed devices from school, you are much easier able to push out software, push out apps, and be able to control what the students can and can't access. So those capabilities are there as well. So that is something, again, that you might want to consider, especially if you are BYOD and you are allowing the students to bring in iPads. Asking parents to download an app so you can use it at school can be quite cumbersome, and it just depends on, I guess, again, whether your school community is supportive of that or whether they just need time, because parents are just as busy as the students these days. Okay, so we're now going to look at an ICT learning trajectory. So we're going to look this primarily in primary schools. And the reason why I look at a trajectory is because I'm very against creating individual tasks. There's nothing worse than a teacher going, I teach my kids all these brilliant math lessons, and they pull up their iPad and they've got 50 apps that deliver those lessons. That's not a trajectory, and that's just activity-based learning. That's really not going to progress the child's or the student's skills in maths or in ICT. So we want to provide a sound foundation of technology skills, as well as them helping to learn mathematics. So we need to, again, focus on the task, and we don't want to focus on how to use the tech. And unfortunately, with the younger students, there is a little bit of that focus, which I will talk about as well, but we need to keep focusing on the learning task. So we want that confidence level, not just to be in teachers, but to be in students also. So this is an example of an ICT learning trajectory in schools. So this is how 3 different schools that I have worked with actually use or how they're basically going to deliver their content for maths, numeracy, and other KLAs. So school 1 have gone down like a device path. So they use iPads for early stage 1 and stage 1, and the students there are basically using SeeSaw, which I love for younger students, and I'm going to show you some examples today as well. Stage 2, they basically focus on Minecraft education, and in stage 3, they're looking at robotics. So lots of different types of robotics. And as you can see there, lots of different operating systems. So they're literally using iPads, Windows 10, and MacBooks. So this is specific to that school. School 2, we're focusing purely on digital literacy. So looking at how schools would actually use the technology, how to actually, use a Windows computer, how to log in, log out, how to access Google sites, whatnot. And then in stage 2 and 3, it was all about multimedia. So they would have numerous like labs set up within their school. So they could have like a film lab, they could have a computer lab, and one with like other tools in this, like the old maker spaces, but it's just been a bit updated and has a bit more tech. So that's that school. And school 3, use SeeSaw predominantly for early stage 1 and stage 1. Then they used G Suite, so Google Classroom for stage 2, and then they moved on to Microsoft, predominantly OneNote in stage 3. Now, the reason why school 3 did that is because they were in an area where a new high school was just being built, and they were always a Google school, but realized that the majority of their majority of their year 6 students were going to go to the high school that was being built or newly opened, that was going to be a Microsoft school. So they were actually getting the students ready for high school by changing their work. So as opposed to, and all it is, it sounds like a bit confusing, but basically instead of using Google Docs, they just use OneNote. It was just a simple replacement of tools. And I'm pretty sure from memory that they could still access that OneNote through their Google Classroom. And that's something that I've done in high school time and time again. So very easy to execute. So what do all of these things look like, or what do they do? So SeeSaw is fantastic for evidence of learning. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples, as I said. Great for critical thinking and great for communication. So already we're ticking things off in the ICT capability framework. Minecraft is my favorite tool of all time. Awesome for computational learning and any STEM related learning activity. There's actually, Minecraft has come a long way actually, and there's quite a lot of lessons that are built into Minecraft now. So you can literally search up different lessons within Minecraft and just launch them for your students. In robotics, you've got critical thinking, creativity, and coding. And in coding, as you probably are aware, there's lots of patterns, lots of math within that as well. Within digital literacy, it's all about learning the keyboard, procedures for logging in, connecting, being able to access different resources, as well as cyber safety, which is becoming huge within the digital literacy space. Great for capturing evidence of learning, as well as monitoring the impact of learning. So from a teacher's perspective, you're able to see what sort of an impact that's actually had on the students' learning of a particular topic. And with multimedia, we see lots of exciting things happen here. Lots of schools are now investing in green screens. They're taking photographs. They're making podcasts. They're making little videos, and that can be done on lots and lots of free apps. You don't need anything exciting or expensive to do. And even just through music, making music, recording music, and on Google now, there's quite a lot of free tools that are accessible by students that are actually able to create those things. So all of these tools, as you can see, we're moving students away from being consumers of tech to be creators of tech. So they're actually creating and producing an output. Okay. Oh, hang on, there's an example there that I forgot to click on. Okay, so let's have a look at here. Oh, I just wanted to go through another example actually for a learning trajectory. So this again is on the website that you all have access to. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom. You've seen all that. So this is for those people who have never seen what the ICT curriculum looks like, the learning continuum. This is what it looks like. So it basically tells you by the end of each level where every student needs to be at. Being a high school teacher, I've done, and working for the department, I've done a ton of research on this in terms of where students actually are when they enter high school. So they all should be by level 4. What we've actually found in not all cases, but the majority of cases, and I'm actually quite confident saying at least 75%, students are still here at level 2. So they're still at the year 2 level of where they should be for ICT. And that's not necessarily their fault or the fault of their teachers. It could come down to just accessibility of resources. It could also come down to, whether the school had resources that were sufficient for the high school's needs, or if the same technology existed or whatnot. So lots of different reasons as to why that happened. But one of the schools that I worked with that looked at digital literacy, we focused on kindergarten because we found that kindy didn't even know how to use an iPad properly. And it sounds really, obscure because, everybody's basically saying that a child is born with an iPad in their hands these days. But what we are finding is that students, like little students, are great at using an iPad. They're great at flicking from side to side or opening up YouTube or playing the next video, but that's as far as it went. So we actually pulled out, in here you'll see it here, we actually pulled out all of the things that would apply to a student in kindergarten. So really basic things: follow class rules, how would they use ICT, how do they explain where data is stored, and that sort of thing. And we actually created a bit of a boot camp. Now, I do apologize for the lack of clarity on this, but basically we made a bit of a boot camp. So they had a lesson a day for 3 weeks, and it was basically just going through tech. So the first lesson was how do you use a main learning device. So it's like a smart board at the front. So like little kids, we're talking 4, 5, 6-year-olds, asking them to come up to the front and touch the board. Well, at home, they're not allowed to touch their TV. So a lot of students were quite fearful that they would actually break it, or they would get in trouble if they were touching the screen. So showing them how to use their fingers and move things and touch things was actually really, really important. Lesson 2, looking at class rules. So what are the rules around using an iPad? What are their rules about using and charging an iPad? Like, how do you actually put the cord in and out? A lot of kids don't do that. Mum and dad do that for them. And something as simple as how to use an iPad. We actually found in this particular instance that students didn't even know how to hold an iPad and walk at the same time, because a lot of mums and dads would say, sit down in the lounge, here's the iPad, you've got 20 minutes, and then take it off them. So students were actually coming to school very unprepared, because they weren't given the skills of how to use an iPad, how to walk around with it, how to hold it with 2 hands as opposed to just 1 hand, and all those sorts of things. So that's what all of these lessons taught the students. Obviously, the students who had access to an iPad were able to do some of the activities a lot better than others, but there are a lot of families out there that refuse to give their children iPads or access to technology, because they do want their children outside and play, and they want to limit screen time and whatnot. So it became quite evident to teachers quite quickly as to what students could and couldn't do at a very early stage, and then it helped them create individual learning plans to support all of those students. So then if they were doing rotations, the students who had very little experience with using an iPad were able to do more activities with an iPad and build up their skill that way. Okay, let me just go back to here. Okay, so let's merge traditional learning with innovation. So all of capturing learning is traditionally done with tech. And something that I love doing is using SeeSaw. SeeSaw is one of my most favorite tools in primary school. And the reason is because it captures everything that a student is doing, like as a video, that you won't be able to normally show a parent, or sometimes even observe yourself. So I've got 2 examples here, which are very, very cute. Hopefully there is sound, because then giggling is very, very cute as well. But this is a kindergarten class. So this is at North Kellyville Public School. And the teacher just set up an iPad in the corner just to observe these students while she was working with some other students, and they could come back and see what they were actually like. So here's a little snippet of them doing their work. So something so simple and yet so effective, and that's something that previously wasn't shared with parents at all, or something that a teacher may not have even been able to capture. So using video to track a student's progress is, or to capture what a student is able to do in mathematics is certainly a way to go. Here's another example that we captured. Oh, and this is just a photograph. So this is a student. So as you can see, just a whiteboard that they would write their equations on, wipe them out. And, at the end of the day, there's no evidence of that learning. So by taking photos, they can, you can actually upload this to SeeSaw as well and have that evidence. You've got a portfolio of work of what the student is doing. Really fantastic idea for activities that rely on whiteboard boards or on whiteboard tables where you do constantly rub them out. And, when parents often come to school and go, you know, well, my child can do this at home and do this at home and do this at home, at least you can come back and go, well, this is a situation in class, and you've got that evidence there as well. But not just for that too, it's great to, as a teacher, to see their progress throughout the year. And there's nothing better than watching somebody's SeeSaw portfolio from the start of the year right through to the end and watch their progress. And a fantastic tool, even to just listen to them read a book, or draw a picture, or write their name, all those basic tools. Great way of tracking progress. Okay, time to check the Padlet. Let's have a look. Okay. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I completely agree. The texts and skills are very different from K to 3 to 6. And I know that I am focusing on the younger years at the moment. I do have some more examples for 3 to 6, so I will go to that, look at that as well. 3 to 6, we would hope to think that they are able and capable of being able to log into tools such as Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams for them to be able to access work, and actually be able to complete some activities. I've got some great activities I'm going to show you in OneNote later on that's going to be aimed at these older students, and again, very simple yet very effective to lead. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, so let's start looking at the individual tools. Okay, so we're going to start with SeeSaw. So SeeSaw can be accessed using any device. And this is what I love about it the most. I'm actually going to show you this. I've actually got it on my iPad. So when I go to schools and I work with students, I actually record them and document their work and put them, add them to my own SeeSaw on my iPad, or you can actually log in through a Windows device or a Chromebook or whatnot, and go through seesaw.com. So it's an excellent way to be able to access the website. The great thing is that the students for this don't need to log on, and this is why it's so popular with the younger years. So as you can see here, we've got a kindy student scanning a QR code to get in, and they'll be actually able to complete their work. If you're using shared devices at school, again, another way, great way for them to be able to access their work, or to upload something to their work. They don't have to rely on logging out of a device, logging back in, and then trying to get into SeeSaw, because as we all know, in a younger classroom setting, that could take an hour in itself. You, the teacher, can see learning in real time, and you can award comments and all that sort of thing. And the great thing about this as well is that parents can see learning in real time. And, you know, one of the biggest, I guess, comments that we get from infants' parents is that they don't know what their child does all day until the end of term. Because, you know, when their child was going to preschool or daycare, they would, you know, there was a book at the end of the day, and then they could read about everything that was going on. Whereas in primary school or in schools in general, we don't tend to do that. We send all the books home at the end of each term, and that's the first time that a parent gets to actually see their work, apart from parent conferences and whatnot. So it's a great way for parents to be able to be involved in their child's work in real time. Okay, so to log in, you just need to use your Google email address. So everybody has an education email address. And the reason why I suggest that as opposed to your DET one is that whenever you see like an option to log in with Google, the department automatically gives you unlimited access. So if you ever see Google somewhere, please use that, because you've actually got more access than you would if you were to use your department, so your DET email address. So SeeSaw lets you record students, lets the students record themselves. There's nothing better when you say to a group of students, complete your work, but I only want you to photograph your best work. And they will do something, and, you know, they'll complete their work, and you go, oh, that's pretty good. And they're like, no, I can do it better. So, and then they'll go ahead and then they'll improve their work, and that's what they take the photo of. So it's fantastic. Students can annotate their work. So at an older level, they can annotate their work and write all over what is right, what is wrong, what they learned from, what they would do differently next time. You as a teacher can create and distribute learning activities. And the great thing about this is that if you're working as a stage, you can have a stage one or an individual class one and shoot everyone off the same learning activity. So everyone in your gear group or your stage is completing the same work. You can use existing learning activities that are built into SeeSaw. It's got a fantastic library that's really great. And there's also a built-in mark book. So I'm just going to quickly show you my example of SeeSaw. Okay, so this is my example from North Kellyville. So I have 5 students here. And if I click on each of one of these students, I will see their work. So this is basically what all of the objects in here that looks like. And I've labeled them each for each group, just so I can remember how old they all are. So this is a kindy student who is doing reading eggs in their own space. This is in a breakout room, so the teacher's not necessarily going to see how the students go. They're probably going to check to make sure they're okay and then leave and check on other students. So a great way for them to record that. We've seen that maths activity. Students just getting excited and doing their work. So here we've got, an activity. It was a maths and music activity. They had to create a pattern with beats and perform that. And it goes on. What I want to show you here, though, I'll just scroll down a bit more, is that these are the lessons that are built in. So this is a lesson, an activity that was built in within SeeSaw. So if the students had to just complete it, this was done on an iPad. They used their finger to write the numbers in, so they didn't have anything fancy. And as a teacher, I was able to come in and comment on their work, and the students would receive that feedback instantly. The great thing about this too is that when you set out work, you can actually allocate outcomes to them. So these are some of the outcomes that they needed to achieve with the particular activities. And this is basically essentially your markbook. And you can then export this into an Excel sheet. And then you've got all of their grades there that you can then either put into your reporting system or whatnot, or just have somewhere else. So it really takes, the whole like documenting everything manually away, and it just simplifies this process. So even when you have meetings with parents, you can quite quickly pull up their work and you can see all of their outcomes straight away. So it's a great way to keep all of their work in one place. So that's basically it for, here are the activities actually. So these are the activities that you can actually do. So if I look at Browse Activity Library, these are all of the activities that exist within SeeSaw. So and some of them are just absolutely fantastic. Now, the great thing about SeeSaw is that it's made by teachers for teachers. So anybody that contributes here is a teacher who has developed something that has proved successful for them. And that is how you know that they're great tools, and everything here is free. If you like things, it's very much like, I guess Pinterest, you can just like the ones that you like. So I'll just like these ones, and then they will appear in my library. So then there they are. They're the ones I've just liked. I can then assign them and actually share them to my students. If I don't like any of the activities there, or if we're very specific as to how we like to give our work out. So if you like to have storyboards or particular ways of doing things, you can actually create a new activity and you can upload your work. So you've got all of these options here as well. So a fantastic tool there. Okay, I'm just going to quickly check the Padlet just to see if there are any questions in regards to SeeSaw. No, so okay, excellent question there. In terms of the results, no, that's purely you as the teacher. The great thing about SeeSaw is that it has great child protection in there as well. So the parent can only see their child. They won't be able to see anybody else within that classroom. And the way that works is that SeeSaw will actually develop a set of QR codes for each individual student, as well as a generic one. So when in class, the student can just select scan the generic one. So you just have to have one up on your screen, and then the student will just click on their name and upload their work that way. Kids are pretty good that way. And at home, they would have their own generic QR code that they would scan and just see their own work. Excellent. I think that's it. Great. Okay. And yeah, photographs and videos, you can't go wrong. Even in a high school setting, still one of the most excellent ways of capturing, student work. Okay, I'm going to move on to Microsoft now. So this is looking at the older students. However, saying that, I have worked with a school where kindy have used Microsoft and have actually access their work through Microsoft Teams and are using OneNote and whatnot. Again, yes, through explicit teaching, it has taken a while to get there, but the students have learnt what they need to do. And the instances that I've taught in, the students are also very lucky to have styluses, so they are actually able to write on their OneNote, so they don't have to rely on typing, because, you know, if we were going to get them to type, it would take them 3 days just to write their name, let's be honest. So let's go on with Microsoft. So the suite is massive. Okay, there is just so many tools that teachers students can access, and the department is great at making sure that students have a lot of access to these tools, and it is pretty much unlimited. So the main ones here are OneNote, Word, and PowerPoint. Those tools are documentation tools. So they are very, very similar online as they are on your designed on your laptop or on your devices. A tool that I'm going to be showing you today, I'm pretty sure, is Whiteboard. It's one of my new favorite tools. It's relatively new from Microsoft, and it's, as it suggests, it's a whiteboard that enables collaboration. So you can actually get your students to work together on a math equation or to create something, not just for maths, for any subject on that. So, and the great thing about Microsoft now is that everything that they've produced enables handwriting. So they're really looking at accessibility, and with that as well, the immersive reader, which is also great. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, look that up, please. It used to only be available on OneNote. It's now available on all Microsoft tools. So it's really good. I have a child here at home. She's in year 10. She's very lazy, and she basically gets her immersive reader to read out everything that she needs to learn at home, and then she completes her work because she just doesn't want to read. So a great tool for all learners. And the great thing about Microsoft as well is that everything has real-time feedback capabilities. So you can literally give your students feedback in real time and help them improve their work, rather than give them feedback and a week later they come back and see the, you know, your comments and are unable to know how to move forward, because so much has happened, you know, since the last time that they handed that work in. So this is the example that I'm going to show. So this is, oh no, I'm showing an example in OneNote. Okay, this is one of my most favorite activities. And I do remember when I showed this to Catherine and her eyes lit up. So it was very, very exciting. So this is just my OneNote, standard OneNote. So basically, I'm going to be using the math tool. So if I click on view, hopefully you can all see this actually. Let me just double check. Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Okay, so that's not right. Here we go, in draw. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my stylus to a pen. For my typing tool to a pen. So I'm just going to change it here. And I'm just going to do something really basic. So I'm just going to go 1 + 1. And you can insert shapes, you can insert anything and click on equals. Now, the great thing about this is that you can ask your students to write down their equations or to practice their math work in here. And there are tools in here that's going to help your students or help you. So by clicking on this math tool here, a list of instructions will come up in terms of telling you what to do. So I'm going to follow these. And so once I've written my equation, I'm just going to select my select tool and I'm going to highlight that. Once I do that, I click on the math button, and over here on the side, it will actually give me some options. I can change that. I can ink it, so it's actually going to come up as text. So I'll just click on that and you'll see what happens. Changes it like this, which is fantastic. And I can select an action. So I can actually, if I was lazy, and I don't like too many students that don't know how to do this, but it's so good for those students who are really self-conscious and just struggle with work, you can click on evaluate and it will actually tell you what the answer is, but it will tell you the steps. So you can actually learn how to do that. And for students whose literacy isn't great, there is, let me just double check that I've got sound here because I don't think I do. Here we go. You can click on this little image here and it will read it to you.
Solution steps. Add 1 and 1 to get 2. 2. Solution steps.
Whoops. Okay, so that's let me just go back. I think I've just closed my link. Hang on a second. I have. Hang on a second, might be a moment. Okay, so great way for students to be able to learn and understand their math a little bit more. The great thing about this is as well is that as a teacher, you can then do some more assessments. So as we said, you know, back in the research that we looked at earlier, a major issue is that students just don't get enough time to do a bit of rote learning. That's something that what we all learned, well, I learned when I was younger, probably not some of you guys, but a great way to get students to, you know, really cement their understanding is by getting to do the questions over and over again. So actually, I think I'm going to have to do this again. Just bear with me. I'll just quickly do this again. Oops. Okay, so now we've got the answer. We've looked at the solution. The computer has read the solution to us, or the steps to us. And now I want my students to practice their work. So what I can do here is I can generate a practice quiz, and it will create an Office form, which is like a Google form, and it will actually generate a quiz. So I'm just going to say 3 questions, and you can actually do this individually for each student, or you can push it out to all kids, completely up to you. And all of the results here will appear in your OneDrive. So you can actually look at all of the data in there. Okay, so here is our quiz. So our first question, what is 3 plus 2? Again, it can read it to us if we like. What is 1 plus 3? What is 1 plus 2? And once the student submits that, as a teacher, we get that data instantly. So a great way to again get instant information as to whether they understand the concept, and a good way to do pre and post you know, lesson testing as well, which is great. Okay, let's have another look. I just want to make sure that everybody is okay with this, and we all get excited about OneNote as I do. Should close it. Okay, does my library offer folders in SeeSaw today? Yes, it does. Oh, that's a really good question. In terms of the library to organize, oh, Caroline, sorry, I didn't see that, to organize folders. I've not done enough work to try to do this. I dare say it would, because it's pretty good at organizing other things. And if you can't organize them in folders, I think you can tag them so they sit within categories, and you can do it that way. But if you like, I can actually investigate that a bit further, and I can add that to the Google site later, so you've got all that information. Okay. Excellent. Okay, great. All right, let's okay, let's move on. Okay, so our next one, I think, is Google. Yes. Okay. So as we know, Google is just as huge as Microsoft. And the great thing about Google is that it's so intuitive. It's suitable for anybody. Anyone is able to use Google. Its capabilities are just incredible. There's really, really good integration between all of their products. So you can literally use Google Classroom as your landing page, your tech platform, and have everything connected via that. They're relatively new tool called Jamboard, which is awesome. Absolutely love awesome. Jamboard is equivalent to Microsoft's whiteboard. So same. Again, it's like a whiteboard. You can write all over it. You can collaborate exactly the same. And they are now catching on to accessibility and are permitting handwriting features on some of their tools. So wherever you see a little stylus pen now appear up the top, you'll be able to start writing. So I dare say that within a short time frame, that's going to start improving, and that's going to be apparent on all of their tools. And they also have real time feedback capabilities as well, which is great. So this is Jamboard. So again, it's like, as I said, like a whiteboard, but the great thing about this is that you can, again, use handwriting, you can insert pictures, you can insert worksheets, whatnot, things that you've already got, and everybody can collaborate on this as well. So this is one that I've set up, and I've just copied and added a few things here already. Just wait for this. I've got so many things open now. Okay. So as you can see, I've used handwriting. I've just to write my equation. I've used the text to write my equation. I've used a Post-it note. So I can have a series of Post-it notes and have students reply on them or mix them all around. So it could be like a matching activity or something like that. And here I've actually inserted a worksheet. So the capabilities here are endless. And the fantastic thing about this is that you can have as many people on this as you want. So you can share it. So you can make this a class activity, you can make this a group activity, or you can have the students work in pairs or whatnot. I've actually also seen students create these and then have their partner actually answer the questions for them. So a bit of peer testing there and a bit of peer teaching there as well. So it's a fantastic tool. It's really easy to use. Everything is on this navigation bar over here. So you can use your pen, you can erase mistakes, you can select certain things as well. So you can add pictures. It's not limited to just these things that are on there. This is where you would add your sticky note. You could add images. You've got your circles and shapes, your text boxes, and this is really, really cool. So if you're doing remote learning or you're trying to show them something on the board, you can use your laser and you can circle things and it will like act like a laser and disappear. So it's not going to hinder the space. So sometimes when you circle things, you still got the circle there and the students get all confused because there's lots of lines and lots of arrows everywhere. So a great tool there. And the good thing is too, that if you're using this within your Google Classroom, you can add more and more pages. So here you can just create a new frame and the students' work will build on. So this essentially could be a portfolio of work as well for a particular unit or a particular topic. Okay, so that's what I have there for Google. Let's see if there are any other comments or questions in regards to that. Okay, do you know what? I missed this one. In terms of your feeder schools or your community schools, in terms of what they use, that's a really hard question. Schools are changing all the time. The best thing that I would suggest is that you have meetings with them. If you've got like a transition group or something like that, or a community network that you could actually discuss that and find out what they all are teaching. I know that a lot of schools at the moment are transforming over from Google to Microsoft, not for any particular reason. That just seems to be the direction where a lot of schools are going. Having said that though, that is more so for a high school journey, whereas primary school still tend to look at Google. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day what the high schools are using. If they're using ICT in primary, they still have the same skill set to move forward. So provided they've got access to those capabilities that we looked at earlier, students shouldn't have an issue with being high school ready. Okay. Okay, off to Apple. Apple is so much better than what it used to be. So if you were one of those people that used to use Apple and feel that, you know, like it was so terrible to deploy within your school, it is not like that anymore. Having said that though, Pat from Manly Vale probably still disagree with me. Apple now is actually supported by the department, so please don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You can still use iPads and Macs quite seamlessly within your school, and the students will get the same similar experience to what they would get if they were using any other device. Okay, let me just go down to my slides. Okay. The great thing about is with apps as well. Although I've said in here that there are a lot of math apps that you can use, I do highly recommend. I don't highly recommend that you download a ton of apps for your students to use. It gets complicated, it gets confusing, and you're not really achieving anything. All you're doing is keeping students, entertained by letting them access different things. Using one or two different apps to be able to do things will be much more successful than them accessing lots of different tools. With math apps as well, if you are having school managed apps that are being managed through like Apple School Manager and Jamf, the great thing about it is that as a teacher, you will have your own iPad and you can push out apps to your students in real time. So that way they are only using or accessing what you want them to see at a particular time. And the great thing about Apple now is that they have something called Apple Classroom, and it's very different to Google Classroom. Does not operate the same way at all. But basically with Apple Classroom, you can see all of your students' iPads. So it's like a bit of like a nanny cam sort of thing. You can see all of your student iPads in there, and you can actually, see if the students are on task or if they're doing the right thing or if they're being able to complete the task well or not. And that way, rather than try to go from like one student and check them all, you've got all 30 or all 20 right in front of you, and you'll be able to see what they do. So it's a really, really cool tool. Something I wanted to show you as well on an iPad, I've got mine here. Now, really basic things, but the most important feature here on an iPad, believe it or not, is the fact that you can scroll down from the top. And that bar there has so many accessibility features that will support any school. And the great thing is that if you've got beautiful smartboards, for $15 per smartboard, you can actually download the Air server. So you can project anything that you've got on your iPad onto the smartboard. And what's even better is that then students can do the same. So you can say, Tommy, can you please share everybody to the screen your work, and everybody can do that as well. So it's a really good way of showcasing your work. The best thing about iPads is the fact that students do know how to use them quite easily, but you are able to record and you annotate your own schoolwork. And that's a really strong skill and a strong learning tool to have within a learning environment. As teachers, we often reflect on our work, but we don't often ask our students to do that. So the fact that we're able to do that is really, really good. Now, with Pages and Keynote, these are two very cool tools within Apple, within an iPad. Now, unfortunately, I'm unable to mirror this to this because this is a Windows device that I'm working on. But Pages is like iPad's version of OneNote. So it's just called Pages, as it suggests. And basically, it allows students to handwrite as well as type on their work. So if you think of OneNote where you can keep all of your notes together, Pages does the same thing. So you can actually be able to keep all of their work in there, and the students can actually break up their work into different sections. So they can have a particular page or a section for like numeracy, literacy, and so forth. And again, same sort of capabilities and writing capabilities as you would with like the Google and the Microsoft tools. Keynote is more of a presentation tool, but also fantastic for completing math activities because it's interactive. So this is where the creation comes part of it. And Keynote will allow students to come create games and presentations on mathematical problems or patterns or whatnot in a really, really cool way. And it's very different to PowerPoint, and they can actually create like a little movie themselves that would explain a particular concept. So really, really cool there. Okay. All right, I'm just going to check to see if there are any questions in regards to Apple. Nothing like an awkward silence. Here we go. No, nothing in regards to Apple. Excellent. Okay. Okay. So far, so good. I'm assuming that no questions means everyone's okay with everything and we're okay to move on. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to go and look at now is student feedback. So as we all know, student feedback is really, really powerful, and there's lots of different ways that we can do this. All of the tools that we've looked at all have capabilities within them that you can add comments, you can add notes, you can give verbal feedback through microphone tools that are within those tools as well. Lots of different ways that you can give feedback. Now, because they are all very different, because they are specific to the tool, what I have done is I've actually created this page, which is in that Google site that I shared with you earlier, basically a set of videos that you can actually look at in your own time. That is a video there. I don't know why that's come out like that, in terms of how to give feedback. So really, really excellent tools, excellent videos that have got great explanations as to how to do that. And they don't all go for very long as well. So hopefully you'll have some time to look at that. Okay. I can't believe I've done this. I think it's the 12 coffees that I've had, and Catherine doubted me, but I did it. I'm done by 5 o'clock. Look at that. Who would have thought? If you could all please complete this exit survey for me. It's a really, really quick survey, just so I have an idea as to how you went to, how you felt today's session was. And if you want any more feedback or any more support coming up, more than happy to do so also. So it is case sensitive. It's bit.ly/NBLA_exit, all in capital letters. The link is also on the website. So if for whatever reason that's not working, you can, oops, let me get out of that. Oops. You can go back to this website. I think it's under presentation, actually. Under presentation. Here we go. And the exit survey link is just there. So that's this. If you could just answer those few questions for me. Okay, that is it for today. If anyone has any questions, please speak up. More than happy to help. Okay, I think we might wrap it up there, Catherine.
Just while we're waiting and people are finishing up, Noelene, I just want to say thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for sharing your expertise with us. Definitely great to see the links to the capabilities, and also just a good starting point for us to then feed back to our schools on different tools that we can choose to use. And I think one thing that really hits home is using less tools and using them well, as opposed to going too much into all the different nitty-gritty apps and things that are out there, because once we master one, we can then do so much with that as well. So thank you very much for your time. And obviously the link for your presentation will go up as well, so people can then send that on to people within their schools and spread the love too.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Noelene.
Thank you. Bye-bye.